Now, if you like the recent Night Rogue armor set, then you're going to like these vampire weapons, because when you're in combat, they trigger a pretty easy to activate blood-sapping animation that looks particularly good at dusk or in the evening. Now, there's 4 weapons in this vampire pack. We've got ourselves a one-handed sword, a one-handed hammer, a two-handed Dane Axe, and the Vampire Bite Hunter's Bow. And it's most certainly going to be an inbound Helix weapon pack, by the way, and our thanks go out to Peda and Ibsarp for finding them in the game file so we could have a preview here. This is of course all subject to change, and we don't actually have an ironclad release date as of yet, but I reckon they're probably going to be coming out around April after the release of Dawn of Ragnarok on March the 10th. But let's first take a look at the one-handed sword. It's called the Vampire Fang, and it's described as draining enemies' lives, and nobody truly knows the effects of it. Well, we most certainly do, because the way we can trigger this cool looking blood-spattered animation in combat is by finishing enemies off with light finishes, and this is going to increase our ability damage by 15%, which lasts for a whole minute. Now, I don't necessarily think an ability damage buff is necessarily good, but the fact that it lasts for 60 seconds, stacks 3 times, and doesn't seem to have a cooldown means that you can frequently pop the vampire weapon animation, and if you like the look of this, then it's not too bad at all in my opinion. The weapon design itself also looks very rustic and gruesome, and it's the kind of thing I'd expect a vampire weapon to look like, and it does go very well with the Night Rogue armor set, presumably intended to do so. And all in all, I don't think this is a bad weapon at all. If this kind of aesthetic is your vibe, it's certainly worth consideration at Redder in the future when it drops, I imagine, in 2026. That joke will never get old. Now, next up, we've got ourselves a vampiric one-handed hammer called the Brain Smasher, which I think speaks for itself when it comes to the description. No more needs to be said about that. But when it does come to stats, we're on the same page here as the sword, in the sense that it's got nothing to shout home about, as your stun increases by plus 15% after hitting enemies with special attacks. So that's essentially you holding down your parry button to activate that special attack ability. But the big benefit in doing that, though, is this is going to trigger that vampire blood spatter animation, which stacks up to 8 times and also lasts for 60 seconds with no visible cooldown. And what this allows you to do, as you can see here thanks to Peda, is when you equip both of these weapons, you almost get spammed with this radial blood explosion, and it doesn't seem to regenerate life, which is probably a good thing, as the frequency of these weapon ability triggers, I could actually see it being super overpowered if you just constantly regained life. And all in all, I don't think it's a bad looking hammer as far as appearance goes. It's not something I'll be grabbing personally, but it definitely looks like a warped blood smasher, so you're definitely on if this is your cup of tea, or I should say coffee. And by the way, if you have learned anything new so far, and only if you wouldn't mind, a very swift like down below on the video really does help me out. And while you're actually down there, I'm also running a free Dawn of Ragnarok DLC giveaway. You just need to be a subscriber of the channel, and the link to enter is in the pinned comments. So cheers and good luck. Now, moving on to the Dane Axe, it's called the Vampire Claw, and if you're after the cosmetic blood effect, then this weapon out of the bunch is one that you may want to swerve, as it's quite taxing to get it to proc in combat. The main reason for that being is you're going to need to drop 3 heavy finishes to pick up the blood animation, which will also net you an additional plus 15 weapon damage, which is decent comparatively to the other 2 weapons so far. I also didn't mention that the weapons themselves glow after activation, and it's kind of hard to tell with the sword and hammer because they're always activated due to the nature of their perks. But what's notable with the axe is that it's easier to differentiate when it procs, and it takes more time to activate because it's of course more challenging to join together 3 heavy finishes in relatively quick succession comparatively to its more mobile and swifter one-handed counterparts. Again, I don't think it's a bad looking Dane Axe, and I don't run with them myself, so it is going to be a very easy pass for me. However, I can completely understand the appeal if you're eyeing this one up. Now, moving on to our Hunter's Bow, it's named the Vampire's Bite, and it's described as being silent in the night, designed to emulate a bat, which I think it most certainly does. I also don't think it's a bad performing bow at all, to be honest with you, all things considered I mean, as you pick up an increase in range damage by plus 15% once you hit 4 headshots, with the duration of that buff running for another 60 seconds, which still doesn't clarify if it has any sort of shadow cooldown, so plenty of time to keep the blood effect popping up whilst in combat. What I would say though is if you run with Hunter's Bows, like the visual style of this set and the vampiric animation, then it could be quite satisfying headshotting enemies, as the blood burst gives you that reassuring pat on the back for keeping your 360 no-scope headshot skills in good order. Now, vampires aside, I've got something else for you here. I've got a full breakdown of the Dwarven armor set, and it's coming very soon thanks to Ibsarp and Peda. So if you want to know what that's all about and what they found, make sure you click the notification bell so you can find your way back to the channel here easily, because it looks absolutely awesome in my opinion. Anyway, big thanks to Peda and Ibsarp again for bringing us this first look, and I'll catch you in that Dwarven armor set video very soon if it's not already on your screen right now. Cheers for watching, and as always, coffee's on me.